Welcome to Mixed Messages, a show where each episode we discuss someone's personal mixed race experience. I am your mixed race host, Sarah Donahue. Now, please join me wherever you are in giving a very, very, very warm welcome to my special guest, Samira Milton.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a delight to be here.
I am so happy you're here. Let's get it going.
Let's go.
Let's get started. Samira, I have to know, what are you?
Oh, I get asked this all of the time. And I always want to say, I don't know, what are you? Are you a loaf of bread? Right? Like, what are you? I am a knitter. I am a professor. I am a writer. I am a dog person who has fallen madly and passionately and crazily in love with a cat. I am a vegetarian for over 30 years. I am a daughter. I am an aunt. I am a sister. I am a friend. I am all sorts of things. And those are never the things that people are asking when they're asking questions, right? So what people are asking is,
what could it be?
Right,
what could it be?
I don't know. Got no idea. But what they're asking, right? It's like, what is your racial and ethnic background? And the answer to that is that my father was from South Asia. He was Indian, although he was born before partition in India, in what is now Pakistan, but he was Hindu. And my mom is from Illinois. She's white. She's a strawberry blonde. Her family are some of the original settler colonialists, which is a complicated heritage to carry as a person of color. She's from a Unitarian family, very involved in sort of civil rights and progressive causes. And that is really the heritage in which my parents raised me.
And what people hear is, I'm Indian and white.
Yeah. Or what they hear is, I'm Indian and I want proximity to whiteness.
All right. Okay. Now, you just got into it. Let's get into it. I love it. You have a book. I see it behind you. Do you want to show people what that title is? Because what? The racism of people who love you. The title alone says so much. What gave you the idea to write this, and why now?
Even the lead up to the 2016 election, I was out to dinner with one of my best friends. We were talking about all of the horrible things that had happened as a result of the Trump presidential campaign. He either whipped up and created racism that wasn't there before, or what I personally think is far more likely, which is that he created a culture in which people could say all of the things that were running in their heads the whole time.
Absolutely.
My friend was asking me about my experience, and I was like, oh my God, it's so terrifying. It's horrifying. It's really upsetting. And then something prompted me to say, the racism that hurts me the most is not the racism that scares me the most. I am really scared of what's going on in the country. I'm really scared about racial violence and unrest. And I'm really upset when I get spit on at the grocery store. But it doesn't hurt me in the way that the sort of casual, not unthinking, unintended racism of the people who love me hurts me.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he said, are you talking about me? I said, I wasn't thinking about you. But remember that fight that we had when I came to visit you while you were living abroad.
This is the end of the book.
Yep.
And this is the thing that enraged me the most, and really passionate, look at this. What the, oh my God, how can he do this?
I have to say, I feel so seen when you hold up your book and it's all written in. I'm like, oh my God, there was a whole conversation.
Yes. Break down the fight. What was it about? What did he do?
I had gotten on an airplane to go visit him. He was living abroad. On my way there, had a super unpleasant airport security moment. I've had a lot of really unpleasant airport security moments.
Yeah.
And now I don't actually remember what happened in that one, because when I was arguing with him about it, I like marshaled all of the unpleasant. So I remember the argument. I remember being like, I've been body cavity searched. I've been this,
Yes.
I've been that.
That's saying something too, because
Right.
it's happened to you so many times that you can't remember exactly which one that was.
Right.
That's even more problematic.
He said, look, you know, you're not a terrorist. And so you know that when they search you, they're not going to find anything. They make everybody safer, including you. So why not just.
So why not put up with humiliation and racism?
He's like this white guy who doesn't have any sense of what that humiliation feels like and is in that moment refusing to hear it.
When someone knows you and understands you so well, and I mean, this is your book, and you have this love for them, when they deny and don't want to hear such a big part of what happens to you and what hurts you and what you go through, that kills. What were you feeling and what did you do?
What I remember, the flood of sort of fight or flight hormone, like that feeling. I remember the feeling of I'm going to throw up. I remember wondering whether this bedrock relationship in my life was falling apart in front of my eyes. It felt like a breakup, although it wasn't clear to me whether it was happening because he had just shown himself to be someone who I couldn't be friends with, who couldn't see me, or whether it was happening because I was kind of insisting, like, I go on to apologize to him, but in that moment I was standing my ground. I was like this feeling of just intense devastation.
Yes.
I couldn't afford a hotel, so I couldn't afford to leave, and I couldn't really afford to change my flight. And if I had gotten on that plane, the friendship would have ended probably. So I stayed. We repressed what had happened. We moved on. We actually had a perfectly pleasant visit, and the thing sat there underneath in our friendship like canker.
And let's go back to something you said, because this happens all the time. You apologized, and I'm guessing he accepted that apology. Yeah. My friends expected me to apologize for overreacting when one of them said the N-word and the other one was good with it. There was a time that I would have. The fact that I didn't, called them out and said, this is peak racism, this is racist, they were so offended that they stopped talking to me.
Mm-hmm.
In your case, your friend and you buried it, but it came back up, and he did see the error of his ways. And he did say, yes, that was racist.
I saw the error of his ways in supporting a system that to him was neutral, but to people of color and to white people who are paying attention is not neutral. But he also saw the error of his ways as a friend in wanting to have an argument about it rather than to being present to my pain.
Yes.
So when I go talking about this book, about 50% of my book talks have been on college campuses. They always ask me, how do you make the choice about whether to stay when something like that happens or whether to go? Because I say you don't. Sometimes it's going to confirm something that you realize that you always knew and were trying not to pay attention to. And then you walk.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you realize that it just shocks you. It might be that you get enough out of having somebody with that shared history and they show up well for you in other ways. And now you're watching and they're not repeating the mistake.
I don't know if it's fair to call racism a mistake. A bad haircut is a mistake. Not picking your friend up at the airport is a mistake. It is always exhausting for people of color to educate, but also to wait.
Mm-hmm.
My answer would be different to the students. It's also up to, I would say that when a friend denies a part of you, and they will not accept that part of you and will not accept responsibility, it's time to walk. How much do they love you if they think this about a huge part of yourself and your life? And how much has that friendship existed if they feel this way?
I really hear what you're saying. It's exhausting to constantly be educating. I'm more tolerant of casual racism that is the product of sort of like your politics are right? Like you've got a Black Lives Matter t-shirt sign in your yard, but you like also are a white person who doesn't have any idea about what kind of privilege you're walking around with. When you're mixed, on the one hand, you maybe have more insight, more sort of close relationships with a broad variety of people. There's a value in code switching. There's also a value in sort of allowing people to be messy and imperfect. And like, I think that there's loss in cutting people off, but also there's this huge risk that you've been habituated since birth to accept
right
horrible behavior as the cost of love. And I think there's a real value into giving people, into saying like, okay, you don't understand something. And even when I try to explain it to you, you're too defensive to get it. But when you come back to it, over time, you learn and you grow. If you don't learn and grow, you've put up with the person and the toxicity for longer.
They need to be the ones coming back to it. It should not be the person of color saying, oh, have you thought about that racism? Huh? Are you bad? Do you feel bad now? There are some things I hear from you that I wonder, and I want to know. When you say this person made a mistake, things are messy, all this and that, and hey, they're doing the right thing, they say Black Lives Matter, do you feel that you protect white fragility?
I think I worry a lot about whether or not I protect white fragility. I also worry about which is the bigger cost. In my life as a mixed race person, I love my mother beyond all description. My mother has a lot of white fragility. My mother also has a really strong sense that by marrying my father and becoming our mother, she gave up a lot of her white privilege. In some ways, she's really right. And in other ways, she's totally wrong, right? Like that's just insane. But I don't want to be estranged from my mom. When she discovered the concept of white tears, I was talking about how I had been at some place for Asian academics, and some of us were Asian American and some of us were Asian. One of the Asian Americans used the phrase white tears, and one of the Asians wanted to know what the term meant, and we defined it for her, and she was so excited. She was like, that's the best phrase I've ever heard in my life. So I was telling that story to my mom. My mom wanted to know what white tears was, and my mom was like, what's wrong with crying to show empathy? And we had, boom, massive fight. And in the end, I was like, you know what? I can't talk to you about this. And I called a different really good friend. I talked to called one of my best friends who is white. And I was like, okay, look, I need you to talk to my mom, white lady to white lady about
Thank you.
Because I'm out.
We are tired. You talk to your people. And also, also, white people need to hear it from white people, because often when they hear it from a person of color, they're like, oh, they think everything's racist, or, oh, they're blowing this up in proportion. When another white person said, you know what, check your whiteness. This came up when I was reading the book. Quite a bit. As far as protecting white fragility, you give a lot of other reasons that these people are good. You say, oh, of course they don't know about this, and of course they do this, and da 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 da. And I think that right there, like, one, like, doesn't balance it out. When someone does something to you, you don't say, well, they did this, that, and the other, so it cancels it out. And I do feel like that's happening.
I do that with other things.
Okay, but should you?
I think it depends. There's massive loss in having lots of just sort of ended, cut off relationships.
Right.
Because people were imperfect in whatever way.
It feels like a lot of times you do give them not necessarily passes, but excuses that they would give themselves.
There are times when you have to say, what it will do to me to call this out,
yes,
is not, it is also not my responsibility to fix this brokenness. And yes, I am deeply disappointed in every white person I see not calling it out. I have not been to a family holiday dinner in over 5 years because I can't really take it anymore.
Tell me why.
In the book, right, I talk about this moment when one of my aunts takes a ladle from a soup that is not vegetarian, puts it in the vegetarian soup, despite the fact that there's a ladle there, and then treats me like some sort of religious hysterical fanatic when I no longer want to eat the vegetarian soup. It turns out that even though I didn't realize that never like moving the spoons around is a key piece of Indian culture, that's something that I was trained as a really little kid, that I don't remember that you don't do that because it makes it not vegetarian. And my aunt is doubling down and treating me like I'm being ridiculous and unreasonable, and how could I expect consideration from her about this? I make the argument that, well, neither of us totally realizes that she's being profoundly culturally insensitive. She's also just sort of being a jerk. In the sort of world of my mom's family, they sort of feel like they have accommodated my father's family in the Indianness as much as they're gonna go. Whoa, and now, like, I pieced out. I was basically told, you can come back if you do X, Y, and Z. And I was like, I am not willing to do X, Y, and Z. And so I have never gone back.
What is the X, Y, and Z?
Deal with your anger management issues.
Oh.
In settings in which I actually do not think I have lost my temper, there is always in the back of my head a question of what there is about race or about gender. I was never willing to call it out for what I thought it was. I just sort of tried to stuff it down and wasn't consistently successful. They just thought, like, she has an anger problem.
I wonder if one of their white family had been that angry, if there would have been a problem.
Not only is my anger getting read as dramatically more angry as equivalent amounts of anger from other people, right? From white people, but my anger is in response to one of two things: microaggressions that you could somehow tie to racial or cultural difference, or a kind of fundamental disrespect, whether or not they are happening in the context of the family for racialized reasons, happen to me in the outside world all of the time for racialized reasons, which causes me to kind of assume that they're happening for racialized reasons inside of the family.
They are, whether they know it or not.
Right, exactly. And B, to have no fucking patience for it.
Yes. I don't care what generation they are. I don't care if they have mostly white friends. They can read, they can listen, they can do the work, and they have it.
I think you're actually giving them too much credit.
Okay.
They do the reading. I know what's on their bookshelves. And I
That's
can see
even worse. I am giving them too much credit. They do the reading and they're like, this ain't me.
Right.
Woo-hoo-ho-ho. You said when people have talked to you about the book, they have shied away from asking you about the Indian side of your family. So let me ask about the Indian side of your family, and specifically what you write about in the book, and specifically when they talk about white women.
What they say about white women thing is less of a family thing and more of a sometimes in person of color, like academic settings thing. Oh, yeah. And then there's the family. Scholars of color who are academics. I have heard so many times, under no circumstances can you trust white people. The weird thing is that sometimes the people who are saying this will be married to white people. When I talk about my mom, I need her full complexity as a flawed human being who is also a profoundly loving and giving person to be allowed on the table. This is a discourse that does not serve mixed people who are mixed white. If the answer is no, you can't trust the most primary, like infant relationships, formative relationships of your life. There needs to be a discourse that takes into account that that's actually what's being said.
I don't think they're talking about different relationships, because you said some of these people are even married to white people. The majority of white women voted for Trump.
Yeah.
I would associate you can't trust white people with that. I wonder if they are talking about personal relationships. On the other hand, I hear you. It doesn't really matter because you're offended, you're half white, and you have this white family, especially your white mother, that you trust, love, consider possibly, maybe, definitely one of the closest people to you. And I do think this is valid and needs to be heard.
In the same way that I don't think it's people of color's job to suss out what white people really mean when they say things that are not totally okay. I'm not sure it should be the mixed race person's responsibility to suss out what people of color really mean when they say something like that.
You mean monoracial people?
Right. What monoracial
people not mixed with white.
Or people not mixed with white. In Asian person of color communities, there's a lot of authenticity policing. Any sort of fondness for, like, I don't know, apple pie are often framed as a political ploy for proximity to whiteness, rather than an authentic, like, because Indian desserts are a pain in the neck and my mom is American and therefore is better at American desserts, apple pie is more the dessert of my childhood than, you know, I don't know, gulab jamun.
We've got to also consider you are half white. Right. You're gonna have whiteness in you. You're gonna do this. I mean, maybe you even put raisins in potato salad. I don't know.
Is having elements of whiteness always this problematic play for white supremacy? Or is it sometimes, I want my great-grandmother's patchwork quilt on my bed because my great-grandma told amazing stories?
A lot of times I'm around only people of color, and I hear, oh, you're so white. You're being so white. Oh, look at your white. They would never say that to a white person because they are being so white. So right. A lot of times it's been a joke, and not necessarily because I'm mixed with white. But sometimes it's not.
I have always been, for all of the racism that we've been talking about this whole time, more comfortable with the white side of my family than the Indian side of my family.
How come?
The Indian side of my family have always been perfectly happy to tell me that I was not Indian enough. I have a memory of the aunt who was, when I was a little kid, my very favorite aunt. She said to me, it would make her very sad if her kids showed respect in the American way.
Okay.
In India, when somebody says, "Would you like a cup of tea?" If you are a younger generation in that family, the proper response is not, "Yes, please," or "No, thank you." It's, "Oh, can I get you a cup of tea?" For 10 years, I've been old enough that I'm supposed to be knowing and doing this, and no one ever told me. And I've been being judged, and my aunt has been repeatedly disappointed in me. And that hurts.
Why did it fall on you at 14 to be more Indian and not them and your father to teach you what would be more authentic?
Want to hear the craziest version of this?
Yes.
I'm monolingual.
Okay.
I get blamed for not speaking a language that the adults in my life did not speak around me.
Yeah. Yeah. What is that?
The aunt in particular that I'm talking about, she wasn't around enough to really like teach a language or teach a culture due to her presence. And then she was really mad that I didn't have those things, which maybe she thought my father should have been doing.
But she released the anger on you.
She released the anger on me, or not as anger, but as like constant criticism. Like when it was too late to do anything about it.
Yeah.
When I was sort of a teenager and she was starting to think about becoming a mother, she was really, I think, worried about like what the differences between her and her kids would be. And being able to say, "You're a problem, and you're a problem because your mother is white," was a way of saying, "But my kids won't be a problem because I married an Indian."
Did your Indian side of the family not approve of your dad marrying an American white woman?
In the extended family, there was definitely some disapproval and definitely some people who were totally champions. In the immediate family, there was no overt disapproval, which makes it harder to tell when people are keeping their mouths shut, but it's leaking, right?
Yeah. If you can't tell, Samira, I have thoroughly enjoyed this. And I have thoroughly enjoyed your book. And there is so much we haven't gotten to. So I encourage everyone, let's see your book again, please. Get this, the racism of people who love you. Samira, do you have any final thoughts?
This has been so much fun.
It has for me too. Thank you for joining us on Mixed Messages. Please let me know if you want to be a guest. I'm always looking. Give me comments, give me questions. I love them. Or start a conversation with me. I love that too. Obviously, I love a good chat about race and racism. Thank you. Thank you so much again, Samira, for joining us, and see you all next time.